anyone would like to sit closer, in the Ezra Snoshim in the Rumah section, you can sit in the front row. First, let me take this opportunity to greet you to the young people of New Hyde Park, and also to greet Rabbi Meir Kahane. In this week's Sedra, so we have the story of Eliezer looking for a wife for Yitzchak, and after he finds her and dealing with her family, negotiating with her family, so Eliezer says to the family in the following terms, Hagiduli, tell me what your decision is. The lo hagiduli, and if you're not going to tell me, so I will know what I have to do. So I saw a very interesting sort of parish commentary on this phrase of Eliezer, where the commentator says that Eliezer said to the family, Hagiduli, tell me if the answer is yes. Now we could learn the other phrase different ways. The imlo hagiduli, and if you're not going to tell me, the answer of silence. Or you could learn imlo, if the answer is no, hagiduli, tell me that also. Either way. So really one could learn this phrase of Eliezer in the following sense. There is an answer of no in which one says forthrightly, which one says right to a person's face. And there is an answer of no, of shtika, of silence. It seems that the history of Rabbi Meir Kahane is that in confronting what he has to say, he always comes up against the wall of silence. I would have preferred an interesting debate tonight, and I think it would have been far more exciting than the other debates that we were subject to recently. But an interesting debate, but unfortunately, the telling to Meir Kahane is always done by silence. No one is prepared to debate, to confront the uncomfortable questions that Rabbi Meir Kahane has to direct to us. But I'm quite sure that Rabbi Meir Kahane isn't surprised. It's nothing new to him. I have to tell you that many years ago, more years than we care to count, when Rabbi Meir Kahane was a member of Beitar in his teenage years, he used to come around to the Shomer Hadati and to Bnei Akiva, and he used to confront us with questions also, even at that time. And I can tell you our response to him was silence. People don't like to face up to uncomfortable questions. And so after many years and after many decades, I think Rabbi Meir Kahane is facing the same silence. The inability to face difficult and uncomfortable questions. It really gives me great pleasure to bring you forth Rabbi Meir Kahane.
Has been a period in Jewish history when it was ever different. Sanu Bashal Mochia, a verse from Amos. They hate he who criticizes in the gates. And none of us likes people who cause us pain and who cause us to think painfully. And so we attempt to shut out the person who causes us pain. Despite the fact that in his causing us pain, he really seeks to save the person who feels it. The state of Israel stands today crumbling and tottering. It does us no good to look away from it. It does us no good to look away and say, if I look away, it will go away. Unpleasant things do not go away by themselves. There's a country which for 11 months has suffered an intifada, an uprising of Arabs. And the intifada will not go away unless the Arabs go away. But as long as the Arabs are there, there will be an intifada which will go beyond Gaza and Judea and Samaria, and which will, God forbid, reach into Jewish homes as it did this past weekend. And a mother and 3 children died in a fire bomb. Attack on a bus. Who killed those 4 Jews? How easy it is to say the Arabs killed them. The rabbis tell us that when the body of a Jew is found, a murdered Jew, and we do not know who was the murderer, the elders of the nearest town have to come out to the body, and they have to announce, Yadeinu lo shafchu et adam hazeh. Our hands did not shed this blood. And the rabbis ask, does anyone think that the elders of this town shed this blood? Why is there any need to make this kind of a declaration? And they say, the elders say, we did everything to ensure the safety of this person. The governor of Israel cannot say, Yadeinu lo shafchu. The governor of Israel cannot say, we had no share in this blood. Just as it cannot say that for the hundreds of Jews that have been murdered within the state of Israel over the last 4 decades. Because each and every Jew who attacked the concept of removing the Arabs from Israel has a share in the shedding of that Jewish blood. Had the Arabs not been there, the Jews would not have been killed. That is the bottom line truth. And to speak in moral terms of not wanting to move out the Arabs, to speak in terms of mercy, Jewish mercy, is to pervert Judaism. The Ramban, the great biblical commentator, says, he speaks of 2 kinds of mercy. Rahmanut, which is mercy. And then he says there is also Rahmanut shel tipshim, the mercy of fools. And he declares, he says, because of the Rahmanut shel tipshim, yovad kol mishpat, justice is lost. The rabbis put it more pithily when they say, he who has mercy on the cruel is destined to be cruel unto the mercy. And all the moral perverts who speak of nice, right Arabs are also made in God's image. Anyone ever say that the Arabs are not made in God's image? Every human being is made in God's image. Hitler was made in God's image. Stalin was made in God's image. The question isn't whether one was made in God's image. The question is, what did the person do to the image after he was born with it? So Jews died. Not only do Jews die, but worse, Jews are afraid. Jews are afraid in the land of Israel. Jews are afraid to go to the Western Wall, the Kotel, by way of Shar Shechem, Damascus Gate. Jews are afraid to go to cemeteries, Mount of Olives, to visit the graves of parents because of fear of the enemies. There is no greater Chilul Hashem, desecration of God's name, than that Jews should be afraid to, in their own country. For 2,000 years, we Jews dreamed a dream. And it didn't matter where that Jew was, in Morocco, or in Iraq, or in Poland. It didn't matter where. The Jew everywhere dreamed the same dream in the exile. That someday he'd come back to his country, Eretz Israel. Someday we too would have a state. And someday we would leave the fear of the exile. Proud, strong, confident, Am Chofshi, Na'atzenu, a free people in our own land. Here we have a state. In God's mercy, there is a state. And there is no fear. Of course there is fear. In Jerusalem there is fear. Jews are afraid to drive at night on Kvish Wadi Ara, on the Wadi Ara highway. Wadi Ara is not in the territories, it's in the heart of Israel. Afula, Chadera. In the Galilee, in the city of Akko, Jews are afraid at night to go into the old city of Akko. What is this? I can understand Brooklyn. I can understand Syria. But to find Brooklyn in Eretz Israel is an abomination. And it is not the Arabs who are to blame. We are to blame. We are to blame. The mercy of fools, the perverted ethics. When my son was in Lebanon during the war, in artillery, and he came back and told me that they had received orders not to give fire cover to the infantry if the infantry was attacking a PLO position in a village, lest the fire cover kill innocent civilians. Do you know how many Jewish soldiers died because of that insane order? That was ethic. That was criminal. That was criminal. All the Arabs in Lebanon are not worth the life of one Jewish soldier. When I send my son into the army to fight, I expect his commanding officer to care about him and not Arab civilians. And if not, there is no army. And that is what is happening now. The army is crumbling. A soldier sent into Gaza, given a gun, sent to Gaza, and there he cannot use the gun. He insults you, revile you, humiliate you, spit upon you, throw stones upon you, and you cannot shoot. When I left Israel last Thursday, a trial was taking place of 4 soldiers give up a crack unit for killing an Arab unnecessarily. I don't know what unnecessarily means. What is unnecessary? Do you know what the orders are when you're attacked by, what the official orders are? You're not allowed to shoot unless there is an immediate danger to your life. And at that point, you must first shoot in the air. And after that, if you're still alive, you must shoot in the leg of one of them. It's insanity. Little wonder that we saw on Jordan TV films of soldiers running away from rock-throwing youngsters. It's not a normal country. It's a country that has been gripped by the Rachmanut shel Tipshim, the mercy of fools. And so the Arabs, in proportion to the growing fear of Jews, the Arab confidence rose. Little children are not afraid anymore. They're not afraid. They know that soldiers have orders not to shoot. And if they do shoot, they shoot rubber bullets. What is this? A kindergarten? You're sending your soldiers with rubber bullets? This is Tzahal? The greatest weapon that Israel always had was the fear that the Arabs had of the soldier. There was fear, real fear, palpable fear. There is no more fear. Fear has reached us. It's reached into Arabs. Little Jewish children are afraid of Arabs. Do you understand what that means? And then, when someone comes and says, the answer is, remove them, throw them out, he is a racist. If it weren't such a serious problem, we could write a second volume of Hell. But it is not Hell. As serious as tragedy. And I weep for them. When I was banned, I was not the loser. The state of Israel was. The people of Israel was. But we were the only ones that said what had to be said. And so it's important to realize and understand exactly what was happening. What happened, why it happened, how it happened, and please God, what will happen in the future. To begin with, let it be quite clear, that the attack on Kahane and the ban on Kahane had nothing to do with racism. This headline appeared in one of the Israeli papers 2 months ago. Peres and Shamir were joined together to ban Kahane's list. Peres and Shamir. And let that not be forgotten. The leading party in this drive to ban me was the Likud. The leading party. Not because of racism. Make sure that Shamir loses no sleep because of racism. Because their internal polls showed us taking between 8 and 10 seats. The majority of those seats would be taken from the Likud. That was the reason for being banned. That was the reason. It was a simple, gross, political device which would have made Mayor Daley of Chicago proud. What was done in the end was, of course, that the attack was not only on Meir Kahane, but the attack was upon Zionism and Judaism. The attack was on Zionism for the following reason. We raised the painful, the terribly painful, the frighteningly painful, the unbearably painful question of the immutable contradiction between Zionism, a Jewish state, and on the other hand, Western democracy. the contradiction which is immutable. You cannot have a democratic Jewish state. It's not possible. Zionism and the Jewish state came into being because the Jewish people for 2,000 years did not have its own state, was a minority, and enjoyed such minority benefits as crusades and inquisitions and pogroms and holocausts. And finally, the Jewish people rose and told the world, thank you, but we have had quite enough of the benefits. And we want our own state in which we will be sovereign, in which we will control, which we will run, we will decide. And that can only be done in a state in which the Jews are the majority. That's what Zionism is. That the Jew will always be the majority. Western democracy doesn't know from this nonsense. Jewish majority, Arab majority, whoever is the majority is the majority. And if the Arabs will sit quietly and have babies and become the majority, then they have a right to be the majority. Then they have the right in the Knesset with 61 Arabs. And indeed, they don't need 61 Arabs. They need 50 Arabs, and they'll always find 11 sick Jews to go with them. If they're the majority, then they can vote, not with stones and not with petrol bombs. They will vote Israel out of existence as the Jewish state. Of course there's a contradiction here. And the contradiction finds its clearest expression in a simple question that should be put to every Jewish leader. And indeed, we put it to the Hyde Court, which of course immediately fled from it. It didn't deal with it. It couldn't deal with it. The question, do the Arabs have a right to peacefully and non-violently become the majority and vote Israel out of existence as a Jewish state? Yes or no? Obviously, they can't answer that, because if they say yes, then they're anti-Zionist. If they say no, then they're Meir Kahane. And so they fled from it. The decision ran over 47 pages, none of which dealt with the issues. Western democracy is incompatible with a Jewish state, period. And we have to decide. You want democracy? Get up and say so. And then stop complaining and stop kvetching about the fact that in the Galil, the Arabs are the majority. And I'm always impressed by listening to Shimon Peres and the Labor Party speaking about the reason why we cannot annex Judea, Samaria, and Gaza is because then there will be too many Arabs. I am deeply impressed by such non-racist statements. The truth is that the Galilee has a majority of Arabs today. And for all those people that say we can't annex Samaria because there are too many Arabs, well, what will we do in 5 years with the Galilee, which now has 54% Arabs? In 5 years, it'll be 60% Arabs. What do we do with that? Do we then give that away too? And so that we end up eventually with a Jewish state on both sides of Bnei Brak? And the Mishalash, the little triangle, not so little. Just behind the coastline of Israel, just behind the coastline, about 10 kilometers in, behind such cities as Petach Tikva, and Kfar Saba, and Ra'anana, and Herzliya, and Netanya, is the triangle, with such Arab towns and cities as Hyde and Tira and Kahane and Makkah and so on and so forth. There are 200,000 Arabs, a solid block of Arabs there. When American Jewish tourists go on an American Jewish Congress tour, American Jewish Congress tours are the only reason why the AJC has any reason to exist. When they go on these tours, they're not taken to the Arab villages and the Mishulash. Of course not. Of course not. They'd be terrified. They would find themselves inside Palestine, because that is exactly what the Galilee is. It is becoming Palestine. And the Mishulash is Palestine. And if you go to such Jewish cities as Akko and Ramle and Lod, Lida and Jaffa, you will see cities that are rapidly becoming Arab cities. The Arab birth rate is enormous. It's enormous. The Jewish birth rate is terribly low. We have abortions because Jews are liberal. They have babies and we have the abortions. There's no Aliyah today. There is no Aliyah today. I sit on the Aliyah committee of the Knesset. I know the figures. I see the figures, the real figures. North American Aliyah over the last decade has averaged 2,600 people. That doesn't mean that 2,600 Jews annually came and stayed. Let us not get carried away. 2,600 people a year. Joke. No Aliyah today. No one wants to go to Israel. Not the Soviet Jews. Not the American Jews. And most of all, not the Israeli Jews who are leaving Israel. If not for U.S. quotas on immigrants, half of Israel would be driving taxis in New York City on their way to Los Angeles. That's the terrible, terrible truth. That's the terrible tragedy. And as the Arab birth rate grows, and as the Arabs grow, more and more people will opt to leave Israel, wherever they can go. If not here, to Canada. If not Canada, to England, to Holland, anywhere. But above all, to get out of a country in which there is a gut feeling has no future. That's the reality. We have to decide. You want democracy? Say so. You want a Jewish state? Say so. And then stop this guilt feeling. Incredible. Jews are incredible when it comes to guilt. No one can feel guilt quite the way Jews do. We have honed it to a fine art. It is Jewish AIDS is guilt. We feel guilty about everything, whether we did it, whether we didn't do it. We have an instant. We have to feel guilty. We can't survive without feeling guilty. And indeed, deep down within every leftist in Israel is the feeling that we really are thieves. That we really had no right to come in 1880 and take the country from the Palestinians. That is the way leftists feel. God plays no part in their faith. Judaism plays no part in their faith. They have no love for Eretz Israel. The fact that 2,000 years ago Jews lived there plays no part in their thinking either, because the fact is that was 2,000 years ago. But now the Arabs lived here, and how did we take it from them? And so this guilt is inside them, and they wallow in it. And included, added to this guilt is cowardice, because if you really feel guilty, and if you really feel that we are thieves, then get up and return your kibbutz to the Arabs. But that they won't do. They haven't got the courage to do that. And so they sit and they wallow in this guilt, and they have to take the Arab side on every single issue, hoping that they might win a crumb of comfort from the Arabs. And this is the psychological sickness that has gripped secular Israel. And so when the state of Israel said, Kahane, when he says that Arabs and Jews are not equal, he is a racist. I'm a racist. Did I pass the law of return? Chok HaShvut? Chok HaShvut, the law of return. Basic law of Israel, passed in 1950 by Ben-Gurion, which declares Jews, only Jews, have an automatic right to come to Israel and become citizens. I passed that law. If that law had not been passed by the Knesset in 1950, and I would have presented it as a bill, do you know what they would call me? They would call me what they call me. Was I the one that passed a bill stating that state land cannot be sold to non-Jews? Was it I? Of course not. But there is such a law, and both of these laws were passed to ensure Jewish control of their states. And of course it is good until Kahane says it. And then it becomes racist. I've said it 1,000 times. The incredible contempt that Jewish liberals have for the Arabs. At times I'm overwhelmed by their contempt for Arabs. Any Jewish liberal who lives with this delusion that if only we will raise the Arabs' living standards so that we can say the Arabs of Israel live better than any Arab in any Arab country, then the Arabs will accept the fact that we have taken their country from them. What kind of a mind is that? What kind of a mind is it that thinks that if we give the Arabs indoor toilets, then they'll sit quietly? Electricity, then they'll be happy. What kind of a mind is it that doesn't appreciate lo alechem livado yichya adam? Not by bread alone does man live. And that goes for Arabs. They're not interested in your electricity, in your toilets, in your economic benefits. They are nationalists. They want the country. What is it that makes Jewish liberals incapable of grasping that? What is it? The fact that they have no national pride, and therefore they cannot begin to grasp Arabs who have national pride. There is not one Arab in Israel who wants to live in the Jewish state. Not one. There's not one Arab in Israel who wants to live in a state whose national anthem, Hatikva, speaks of Nefesh Yehudi Omiya, the soul of a Jew yearning. You can imagine how that grips and how it grabs, how it speaks to you. He concludes with the words, Hatikva bat shnot alpayim, the hope of 2,000 years. He breaks down in emotion as he thinks to himself how my Zeta waited 2,000 years for the Jews to come home. Hatikva is the hope. It was our hope. It was the Arab nightmare. Who cannot grasp that? Who cannot realize that on Yom HaAtzmaut, Independence Day in Israel, Arabs do not rush into the street to celebrate their defeat. people will understand Arabs. Jews who have pride will understand Arabs who have pride. If I were a Jewish liberal, I too would play that game. But because I respect the Arab, that's why I say he must go. Zionism is incompatible with Western democracy. And Judaism is even more so. We presented 400 pages to the High Court of quotes and sources within Judaism, which make it clear that there is a difference between a Jew and a non-Jew. But that is not racism, because if that non-Jew would become Jewish, he would be as Jewish and as equal as Kahane is. The obscenity of the High Court accepting the argument that my laws are similar to those of the Nazis. What an obscene thing to say. To compare the Jews of Germany to the Arabs of Israel? As if the Jews of Germany were walking around saying, it's really our country, the Germans took it from us. And when we have the opportunity, we will then take it and call it Israel. The Jews of Germany wanted nothing more than to be the best Germans that ever lived. The Arabs of Israel don't want to be Israelis or Jews. They want to do away with Israel. That's a comparison, an obscenity. An Arab who would convert properly, is as Jewish as any born Jew. Of course this is so. This is a racist concept? Of course not. But a non-Jew, not just an Arab, under Jewish law, cannot be a citizen. He is not allowed to hold a position of authority. That's not Kahane. That's the Rambam. It's Maimonides. It's the Talmud. Of course I would love to have a forum, a debate with anyone, with any rabbi, with any 10 rabbis. And the reason why they don't come is because they can't debate me. They can't debate me. And so, those who cannot debate, defame. Defamation is always the last refuge of non-thinkers. You can't debate. You insult. You call names. You smear. You silence. That's the way of the non-thinker, of the terrified Jewish leader. That's the tragedy. They compared my laws which attempted to ban intermarriage and assimilation in Nazi Germany. Is there one rabbi who would be against the bill to ban intermarriage and assimilation? The same President Herzog, who bemoans the fact that assimilation, intermarriage in the Galut is wiping out the Jewish people. And inside Israel, we say the same thing. He says racism. They not only attack Zionism and Judaism, they attack democracy, their own democracy. Because whereas I said that we're opposed to Western democracy, we certainly accepted democracy for all Jews. And they went further, and they took away democracy from close to 200,000 Jewish voters. There is no difference between a one-party state and a multi-party state except one party. In the Soviet Union, they would tell you, you have the right to vote for that party. And you say, but I don't want to vote for that party. In Israel, they will tell you, you have the right to vote for 27 parties. And you say, but I don't want to vote for those parties. I want to vote for the 28th party. Is there a difference? Of course there is no difference. They banned a party because of alleged racism. Of course I'm not racist. But assuming that it was a racist party, who gives you the right to state that a racist party cannot run? If you say that because to you racism is terrible, it's abhorrent, well then what do I say tomorrow when Orthodox parties find a party such as ROTS, which is anti-Torah, an abhorrent party, which will bring down God's wrath upon Israel, and they sincerely believe that, and they then vote to ban ROTS? And what about a nationalist party which sincerely believes that people in Israel and parties in Israel who stabbed Saul in the back by attacking its actions will eventually wipe out Israel? And they move to ban that party. Where does it end? Where does it end? You let parties run and let the people decide. That's called democracy. And if you don't accept that, you will open the door not only to banning of all kinds of parties, but more. You open the door to anarchy and revolution. If 200,000 people were not given the right, the democratic right, to choose their party, don't complain if they will rise up eventually. You can't play both ends. You can't say, we will tell you what is democracy, and then you will have to follow it. That's not the way things are, and especially not in a country such as Israel, which people are frustrated and bitter and frightened. And they know that the only party that had the answer was now banned. And Arab parties are allowed to sit in the Knesset. Arabs who are bitterly opposed to the very existence of a Jewish state. I think that we underestimate the depth of the bitterness and the anger of many, many people in Israel. As the Intifada grows worse, so will the bitterness and the frustration and the anger. God forbid that the democratic process should simply collapse, unravel. But that is what is happening and will happen. In any event, the banning of the Kach movement is not the end of anything. It's a tragedy for the Jewish people. It certainly is. It's certainly not the end of Kach. We never were a political party. We were always an ideological movement. An ideological movement which used politics as a tool. God forbid that the tool, the means, should become suddenly more important than the end, or even becoming the end in itself. What we have done now, we have achieved a level of support which is unsurpassed. The support for us is incredible, particularly among young Jews in Israel. Among the young Jews of Israel, we are the leading party today. People have come to our rallies and seen it. The young Sephardic Jew, especially, not only Sfaradish, but especially the youngsters, they 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. They don't know baby. They never saw baby. They never heard baby. They only know Kahane. That's what frightened the recruit. That's what frightened labor. That's what frightened Chia. That's what frightened all of them. The thought that in the election after this one, my God, a generation is rising up for Kahane. That's what frightened them. So we continue. We continue. The day that I was banned, we had that evening 4 rallies. Of course we had the rallies. We didn't cancel the rallies. Of course we had the rallies. And we continue to have the rallies and the house gatherings, and the flyers, and the booklets, and the books. We have an idea. We have the Jewish idea, the authentic one. And we will spread that. It's not only the Arab issue. The Arab issue is a minor issue. The real issue in Israel is the Jewish issue. What will Israel be? A Jewish state or a Hebrew-speaking Portugal? That's the issue. Speak of racism? There is indeed racism in Israel. And there has been for 40 years. But the real racism is that which was done to the Sephardic Jews. That was the racism. 800,000 Sephardic Jews came to Israel. Every one of them, pious Jew, practicing Jew, a religious Jew, a real Zionist. Not Herzl's Zionism, but the Zionism of 2,000 years. May our eyes behold thy return to Zion. 3 times a day. They kept alive the flame for 2,000 years. In the exile. They were brought to Israel. Do you know what was done to them? Do you know what was done to them? What was forced on them? Youngsters were taken from their parents and placed in Kibbutzim and other places, in secular places. Youngsters would always observe the Sabbath. The Sabbath was taken from them. They were told, your parents are backwards. The parents were backwards. They didn't have their masters in psychology. They were backwards. They only raised families with deep respect. Didn't know what drugs, didn't know what crime was, but they were backwards. The Yemenite children had their payot, their earlocks, that they called their simanim, the signs. That was a sign of the Jew in Yemen, taken from them. Jewish values were ripped from them, deliberately so, because of the fear of the Labor Party in 1948. If 800,000 Sephardic Jews pour into this country, for whom will they vote? That was the question. For whom will they vote? So they ripped Judaism from them. And they gave them the values of Dizengoff Street. I sat in prison in Israel, in Ramle prison, and in many prisons. And I sat with prisoners, the overwhelming majority of whom were Sephardic Jews. Jews who never knew what crime was when they were in the exile. How many Moroccan Jews were murderers in 1,500 years in Morocco? How many bank robbers were there among the Jews in Baghdad, in Iraq? How many Jewish prostitutes were there in Yemen? Who knew of such things? They taught it to them in Israel. The same ones who now say Kahane is a racist. 600 Yemenite babies disappeared. They disappeared. What is Israel? Texas? Disappeared. They were born to their mothers, And the mothers were told in 1948, and 49, and 50, the baby died. What do you mean the baby died? The baby died? Where's the body? Yay. There was never a body. They were given away. Adoption. Do you think if those parents had been Polish parents or Russian Jewish parents, would they have dared to do that? Racism? When I speak of this at every single rally, you had better believe that those Jews stand there and you can see them shaking. Of course, it's the first time that any Knesset member has ever come to them and spoken of their pain. We continue. No question about it. God tests people. God tests people. And He tested us. And He tested us to see whether we would change our platform in order to stay in the Knesset. And thank God we overcame that test. We did not change a single word. And so we will come back. We will make the cosmetic changes necessary. We'll change the name Kach to Koach, and so on. And from now on, our flyers will say absolutely nothing except verses from the Torah and words of the Talmud. Nothing except that. We won't give them that opportunity now. But we won't change a word about that. Of course. God didn't make any of us. He didn't put any of us on this earth to become Knesset members. He put us on this earth to be good Jews, honest Jews, truthful Jews. Never, ever swerve from them. With God's help, we'll be in the Knesset, not with 5 seats or 8 seats or 10 seats, but with 20 seats and 30 seats and 40 seats. Of course. Time is on our side, and I say that with great, great sadness, because time is not on the side of Israel. As things grow worse, the people will turn to us. Of course they will. There is no other choice. There is no other choice. So, above all, what is this sadness? When we lost in the courtroom, our people came out of that courtroom singing and dancing. And the people outside didn't know whether we had won or lost. Of course they sang and they danced, because it's a minor defeat in life, in which a person is judged by whether he cleaves to God's truth. Minor defeat, but a major victory in that we didn't give in to the temptation to compromise. And so, Kach continues both as a movement and as a political party, perhaps with a different name, which is not relevant. What's in the name? We'll continue. Cosmetic changes will be made. The substantive changes will never be made. With God's help, we will help to save the Jews, both from the Arabs and from the Jews. And please God, we will do our best to guarantee that the state of Israel will survive. And above all, it will be the kind of a Jewish state that it was meant to be always. Little Jewish children will know that they are Jews, and will never again have this tragedy of asking an Israeli child who he is and answering, I'm an Israeli. Not an Israeli. An Arab is also an Israeli. A Druze is also an Israeli. You're a Jew who lives in Eretz Israel. That will be the answer. The schools of Israel will become Jewish schools. And youngsters will be given Jewish pride and Jewish knowledge. Of course, When I sat in Ramley prison, I put a sign on my cell door which read, Kama tov liot Yehudi, how good it is to be a good Jew. And all of this prison would pass by and they go, Kama tov liot Yehudi. You have no idea how good it is to be a good Jew. There is nothing more beautiful in the world than to be a Jew. Nothing more beautiful than to be a good Jew. And it is not easy to be a good Jew. Only cheap things come cheaply. Valuable things. That costs. It costs sacrifice. Who the sacrifice? Mesirut nefesh, giving of oneself. The rabbis tell us on the mitzvah, on the commandments, Kiddush Hashem, of sanctifying God's name. They say, how does one sanctify God's name? They say, Yisor et atzmecha v'kadesh et shemi. Give of yourself, and you will sanctify my name. Give of yourself. If you don't give of yourself, you'll never sanctify God's name. One final word. I come to America. And people ask me, who should we vote for? Bush or the Kahane? And what are you doing? You're in the wrong election. You're in the wrong country. What a magnificent country we could have if it were filled with all the Jews. We wouldn't be speaking of giving of this and absurd. It would be irrelevant. It's such a big country. You have no idea how big it is. Judea is empty. Samaria is empty. Fill it up. Come to Eretz Israel. Come to live there. Not only for, obviously, for positive reasons, it's our home. Come to live there. And I know it's difficult. It's very, very difficult. That's not the point. It's a beautiful thing, and it costs. But if you won't come for positive reasons, think, God forbid, of what is going to happen. Do you know how much they hate Jews in this country? The hatred of Jews, you can feel it, you can touch it. And my radio play, it was unbelievable. Out of the woodwork, it comes the hatred. If God forbid there should be an economic collapse in this country, I don't want to think of what will happen to the Jews. It will be the Jew who is blamed, not the black. The anti-Semites blame everything on the Jews, including blacks. It will be the Jew who is blamed. It will be the Jew who hates the Jew, who is jealous of the Jew, there's envy of the Jew. I've always said, if you want to know what people really think about Jews, don't go to dinners at the National Conference of Christians and Jews. Go to a bar, a neighborhood bar, a working class bar, and there you will hear America singing. And as the schnapps goes in, you will hear what comes out. The jealousy, the envy, the hatred. And that's when times are fairly good. What will happen, God forbid, when times are very, very bad? Must Jews suffer in every century again and again and again? Why cannot we learn from the past? You think that Jews live well here? Find the German Jew who lived in Germany in the 1920s. If I could bottle such a Jew, I would take him with me always. And I would say, tell the people how it was. And he would say, they won't understand how it was. We were Germans. We loved Germany in a way that no American can begin to comprehend. We were Germans. We were embarrassed by the Polish Jews who came with their long black coats and beards and who embarrassed us. For we were Germans. Germany had a Jewish foreign minister, Rockenau, in 1922. America didn't have a Jewish Secretary of State until 1972, and that was only because he fled Germany. If someone would have told the Jews of Germany in 1920 that in 12 years everything will begin to collapse, they would have looked upon him truly as absolutely mad. Of all the countries of Europe, if one would have asked who were the most anti-Semitic, the Germans, no one would have said Germans. They would have said Ukrainians and the Slovaks and the Lithuanians and the Romanians and the... Of course, the Germans were among the best. And it happened not because Germans are different, have horns and tails. It's not true. Germans are not better, they're not worse. The Germans, there was an economic collapse, and the Germans were terrified. And one person came and he said, I will give you hope. It's the Jews. They're to blame. And so, the Jews. You think it couldn't happen here? Of course it can happen. Don't be deceived. Don't be deceived, because for 40 years now there has been a tremendous good life. Life has been good here. But it is a shaky thing. There is a banking crisis which is worse than people know. People think, oh, this is a debt. You cannot keep owing money. This government is in a state of debt collapse. If foreigners weren't pouring money into this country, America could not pay its debts. For all of those reasons, come home. Stop waiting for the Messiah. Bring him. And you bring him by coming home. And by being the kinds of good Jews we should be, and enjoying it. I remember when I went on Aliyah, I took my 4-year-old son, my youngest son, with me to Hebron at night. It was a beautifully starry night. The stars were just filled with the skies. And he had just learned that day in Shiva the story of how in Hebron God told Abraham to go out and look at the stars and count the stars if he could. So shall be your seed. And I said to him, you see, that's how it was that night. In this place, and perhaps you're standing just where Abraham stood. And I remember him looking down at his feet. You can't do that in Nassau County. You can't do that in Queens. You know what it is to walk with your children and your grandchildren in the footsteps of, but really in the footsteps of our fathers and mothers. What a tremendous feeling it is. Because in the end, that's what it's all about. Nothing else matters. Children and your grandchildren and you walking together. That's all that matters. Nothing else. With God's help, we are winners. With God's help, we will win this.
Meir Kahane has agreed to answer some questions, but anyone that knows my style when I ask to moderate such a program, there are two things that I ask. One, please formulate the question well in your mind before you ask it. I give you 20 seconds to ask your question. Anything beyond 20 seconds is a speech. We're not here to listen to your speeches. We're not here to listen to your political philosophy, nor we're here to listen to your ideas of what to do with the Arabs. We're here to hear your questions. So at the end of 20 seconds, I not only want to hear a question mark, I want to see the question mark. All right? So 20 seconds for all questions. Yes, young lady.
Yeah, I want to ask the Rabbi, how to stop the intifada in Israel? What's your solution for it?
If I were Minister of Defense,
We didn't hear
the question was, how would I stop the uprising in Israel? If I were the Minister of Defense, there would be no uprising in Israel. You would tell the soldiers, you have a free hand to do whatever you want to do to put down the revolt. In 2 days, there is no revolt. Whatever you want to do, do. If you feel threatened, you shoot. If an Arab doesn't want to be shot, don't threaten. Gamalnu, that's it. Kasak,
Yes, sir.
Rabbi, 10% approximately of the people of Israel have been disenfranchised from having their vote where they once it was cast. How is it that they have not been rioting and demonstrating in the street?
In Israel, people don't, Jews don't riot. And I'm happy that they haven't rioted. I would not want Jews to riot. That's not the way. I don't want to bring down Israel. I haven't got a Samson complex. But don't fool yourself. Don't think that because they didn't riot, there was real deep anger. Many, many people sent in their ID cards and refused to serve in the army. That's also not a good thing, but it was done. Many, many people are considering leaving Israel. That's not the good thing, but it was done. It's not a good thing, though. But don't assume that just because they don't riot, that they accept it. It's not true. It's just not, it's not so. There was a bitterness, and I think that Israel committed a very, very great mistake. And not to mention this crime, but it was a great mistake on it. And so we'll see what shall be.
Yes, now that once you are out of the Knesset, is there any danger that if you continue to say the things that you've been saying, that they can arrest you?
Well, until November the 29th, I'm still an MK. And they can't arrest me. After that, yes, certainly, there is of course a possibility of that, and probably a probability of it. But certainly it'll be the kind of a showcase in which they'll lose and I won't lose. I may go to prison, but I win. And prison is not the worst place in the world. I must tell you something, that there are millions of people who walk the earth daily in the streets and know that they should do a certain thing and don't do it because they're afraid. Those people are serving a life sentence. And there are people who are in prison for doing that which they wanted to do and know that they should do. Those people are always free.
I just want to know if Israeli prisons serve black kosher meat. That's all. Yes, your hand.
You were quoted in the paper that's telling your people not to vote. If that is true, why did you have him back someone like Zevi from the Moledet Party, who also wanted to transfer the Arabs?
One, I didn't say not to vote. What I said was to cast a blank ballot and write Kahane as a protest. The reason why I didn't back any other party was kind of a dual reason. One, one. I think it's an important thing for Jews to put an end to their delusions. This concept of, well, this is the best party, that's the next best party. Or this party is better than that party. For years, we went along with this delusion, labor, and Likud is better than labor. It is not better than labor. Labor may be worse than Likud. It's not the same thing as saying that the Likud is better than labor. When one runs a 100-meter race, and one runner runs 50 meters and falls down, and one runs 90 meters and falls down, nobody won. They are both losers. One may be 40 yards better, but they're both losers. A party that is not willing to say the kinds of things that we say is a delusion. You'll die quicker, you'll die slower, but in the end, you die. Zevi's party, Gandhi's party, is not an answer. It does not say what I say. They speak of transfer miratzon, a voluntary transfer. We need a voluntary transfer. How many Arabs do you know who will, if you come to them and say, are you willing to leave? Will say, of course. Secondly, he only speaks of the Arabs of the territories, when everyone knows that the most dangerous Arabs of Israel are the Arab citizens of the state of Israel. These are citizens. They vote. They have a say in Israel. They decide what is Israel. Of course they are dangerous. The most dangerous. They're educated. We have educated them because we are not normal. The most dangerous Arabs of Israel are the educated Arabs. Not some falach, some peasant. So for those reasons, it is absurd to say, well, vote for them. We must teach the Jews of Israel once and for all, don't delude yourself. There is kach, and there's all the rest. And if it's not kach, you have nothing. And have the courage and the patience to wait on them. Because if you don't have the courage and the patience, you will deceive yourself and your children by voting for something which is not the answer.
All right. Someone else? Both sides of Rabbi. Put your questions together and then let's go.
Rabbi, I heard you once on a talk show say that if and when you became Prime Minister of Israel, you would ask the United States to stop sending financial and military aid to the country. What I'd like to know is how is Israel going to be as viable a force in the Middle East as it is today without the United States assistance?
First of all, what I said was that I would ask that the U.S. cut off the aid which only goes for purposes of economics, not a military aid. The economic aid that Israel gets doesn't help Israel. It makes us continue as some shtetl beggar. Israel today is an economic basket case. It lives on handouts from the American government, German reparations, EUJA. Israel isn't a synagogue. Israel is a country which has to learn to stand on its own feet, knowing that it gets $1.8 billion of economic aid every single year, helps Israel to turn away from the need to deal with the real problem, and that is to reinstitute institute in Israel a free economy, private enterprise. Learn to stand on your own feet. Learn to work. if we don't do that, not only will Israel collapse economically, but because of this huge amount of aid that comes in every single year, America has leverage, political leverage on Israel. Israel has got to have capitalism. Today, if you want to open a store in Israel, if you want to open a store here on Long Island, find an empty store and you open a store. Come on, that's it. In Israel, it's an adventure, You need a permit. Then you need a license to get the permit. Then you have to start paying taxes before you even enter the store. That's no way to run a country. That's one of the reasons why people flee Israel. I know Israelis who in Israel never worked hard. They just didn't work hard. They came to America and worked 15 hours a day. The same person. Because over here, if you work hard, you make money and you save the money. Over there, you're paying taxes and taxes and taxes. There isn't a single businessman in Israel that can be honest, even if he wanted to. Because if you're honest, you will be out of business. Out of business. I know people in America, wealthy Jews, who would love to invest in Israel, and not in Hong Kong or in Taiwan or in Singapore. But they go to Israel, and they have to run this gauntlet. Bureaucrats, Istanbul rulers. So they say, so who needs this? So who needs this? So they invest in Singapore. I want a country which will bite the bullet and stand on its own feet. I don't want economic aid from this country. Military aid, yes, because that's not a favor to me. Jews have got to stop thinking like shtetl beggars. Think like some plantation darkies. Thank you, Master. What are you talking about? We give as much as we get. How much is the Hyde naval base worth to the Sixth Fleet to be used regularly whenever it wants to? How much is that worth? Israel doesn't get paid anything for it. Philippines just demanded and got an exorbitant amount of money for U.S. bases there. Well, if the Hyde base is not worth anything to you, fine, don't give us the money and you won't get the base. The U.S. Armed Forces today uses the Navy as storage grounds for hundreds of millions of dollars worth of U.S. weapons in case of a war. They put the weapons there and they walk away knowing they're safe. Where could they do that? In any other country in the Middle East? In Libya? In Egypt? Half of the arms within a week would be stolen and then sold to the Americans. So, I don't want U.S. aid economically. And I can assure you that every time I get on some radio program, when the anti-Semites going to say, why should we give you guys so much money? And I say, I don't want it. Take it. Keep it. You have no idea of the silence that follows. I want Jews to learn to work. We don't work. I don't want to see Arabs building Arab buildings. Because that's not normal. We have in our platform that every Israeli soldier in his second year of army service must learn a trade in the army. Must learn a trade. I don't care who he is, if he's the president's son. He must learn a trade. And in his third year, will be sent home, but he's still in the army. He must report to the labor exchange every morning and work in his trade so that he'll get used to working. And then if there are no Arabs around, and you pay them decent wages and good wages, and you stop speaking about my son the CPA or the doctor and start speaking in terms of honest labor as being the Jewish way, then we'll have a normal state again.
Two things I really want to say. One is that if I agreed with everything that Rabbi Kahane said up till now, this business of Jews working, that's where I draw the line. Second of all, ladies and gentlemen, it's really 5 after 10 already, and I'm quite sure if you have such a... You want to go? Very good. All right. Very good. All right. I want to go.
Rabbi, from personal knowledge, I know you've built a tremendous, efficient political infrastructure in Israel. Will that continue?
No. Obviously, we have to cut back.
You want to repeat the question, Rabbi Kahane?
The question is that we have built up an organization, and a really strong group. Will that continue? We have to cut back. There is no question about that. Because one, I don't know how much support, or whether I'll keep getting the same level of support from Jews here. Now, people like a winner. So people don't realize that I'm really a winner. Because people measure a winner in terms of what or not. So, I don't know. If we will continue to have the same amount of money, then we'll of course, keep it up at the same pace. Otherwise, we'll have to cut back. But the infrastructure per se will, of course, stay. Yeah, houses and cars and trucks and so on. We'll have to cut back on workers for a while, but basically it'll be the same. Of course, if you people want to give us money, I'll be happy to give money. I'm not joking. It isn't a joke. It isn't a joke.
Money is never a joke.
No. If you want to, tonight, write out a check to KACH, K-A-C-H. I mean, it's serious. It isn't a joke. Yes.
Yes.
Rabbi, why can't you concentrate on one thing at a time instead of just generalizing? There are 900,000 Arabs in Yehuda and Shomron and Gaza with Jordanian passports. How about transferring them back to their own land? Repatriation.
As soon as I'm the Prime Minister, I will do it. What do you concentrate on one thing at a time? You're an Orthodox Jew, are you?
Pardon?
You're an Orthodox Jew, I imagine. An Orthodox Jew, right?
Yes.
Why don't you concentrate on one mitzvah at a time, just Shabbos? You keep Shabbos and you eat kosher and you concentrate on 613 of them. Because that's the way a Jew has to be. Take it from me. The issues that I raise all have to be concentrated on at the same time. Believe me. Otherwise, there is no state. In any case, I promise you, that as soon as I'm Prime Minister, on the day that the Arabs hear that I'm Prime Minister, half of them will be inside the
You stand up? Could you stand up so everyone can hear you, please?
Now that the top party has announced law, supposing you now bring up the party on an economic basis and come to sort of a back door. Just what you said before about trying to give Israel the economic benefits.
No one is going to win in Israel on that platform alone. It's the way it is today. People today, with all the economic problems that the state has, and it has economic problems, but people today concentrate on one essential issue, survival. They're afraid that they won't survive. They look at their children, and they ask themselves, what will be with my child in 10 years? You can't play games, and I won't play games. The burning issue is, at this moment, what will there be in Israel in 10 years? And that's not an economic question. If it were only an economic question, there will be and Israel. Poor Israel, richer Israel, whatever. The question is, we deal with people who want to physically exterminate the Jewish people and liquidate the Jewish state. That is the issue. People that can do what they did to that bus are people. Why do we have to talk about? Why is it that we forget what they did to us in the past already? Every time I hear Peace Now babbling about the occupied lands of 1967 as being the obstacle to peace, I'm always impressed by the fact that in 1927, the Arabs were massacring Jews because of the occupied lands of 1967. So we know what they did to us. Hundreds of Jews were massacred in the 1920s and 1930s. Hundreds of Jews. They would do to us, and I say this, they would give us the kind of a Holocaust, a slow Holocaust, not quick gas chambers, but knives and hatchets. If you knew what they do to their own people that they kill for informing or for working with the Israelis, they're killed horribly. They're cut to pieces. It's unbelievable. And then people say, well, we have to gamble on peace and trust them. Trust them? Of course I trust them to do exactly what they did. So, you simply can't do that. People know Kahane, what's the answer? Save us. And that's the way it is.
Yes, Mr. Flavio.
Rabbi Kahane, why is American citizenship so important to you?
Why is it? I would imagine it's important to you, right?
It is.
Okay. I mean, so why not just say for the same reason? But that's not the reason. But that's not the reason. If I were to lose it, I would never get a visa. And then there is no other Jewish leader that says the things that I say. And I have to speak on campuses to young people so that they'll hear it. These poor young Jews are lost sheep. And they have to hear this. And I have to come to this country. That's why I'm fighting for it. I know that if I should lose this case, there is no visa for me, ever.
Rabbi Kahane, in reality, how would you transfer all the Arabs, and where would you transfer them? If they will not go by their choice, will you actually pick them up just by force? What is your...
I understand that.
How else?
What troubles you about the use of force?
No, I'm just asking you, how would you transfer them?
First of all, the overwhelming majority would leave without trouble. You know that in 1945, the Poles and the Czechs expelled 12 million Germans from their country. 12 million within a week. A week it did. You think that any Pole asked, but what if they won't go? After what they suffered, they said, "Alavai that one should say no." They had the guns, and the Germans didn't. Thank God. Thank God we have the guns today. Thank God, and the Arabs don't. Can you imagine an Israeli army under Meir Kahane and Arabs saying no? They will go to Jordan. Now I know you're going to say, but Jordan doesn't want them. I don't want them either. And I'm stronger than Jordan. Why is it that if Jordan doesn't want them, so they're not going to go? And if Kahane doesn't want them, one of us is going to have them. And I'm not going to have them.
A million of them have Jordanian passports.
We will seize the
What do you mean
bridges.
they don't go to Jordan?
And we will hold the bridges for 2 days, give them the Arabs, and then give them back the bridges. And if they would like to call Jordan Palestine, let them call it anything that they want. Those in northern Israel will go to southern Lebanon. Who do you think runs southern Lebanon? We. So, It will have to be, and it will have to be soon, because I don't want to think of what will be in 10 years. When the country of Israel will, when the state of Israel will be one-third Arabs. I don't think of that.
Rabbi, granted that it's unfortunate that all the Arabs
We'll repeat the question.
Beg your pardon?
No, go on, go on.
Granted that it's unfortunate that all the Arabs are now in Israel. They were there for lack of foresight, and they wanted the cheap labor. But the fact that they are there now, how do you square Gemilas Chesed with uprooting them family-wise, which is really not exactly a good human act? And the Jewish concept of Gemilas Chesed is very important. How do you square that?
The question is, how do I square my wanting to move the Arabs out to chesed? So, I doubt to no man in my being ready, in readiness to do chesed, to people who are not my enemy. Where in the world do you see in the entire Torah that one has to do chesed to his enemy? What are we, crazy? Here's a people that every day says that we are going to, if we have the power, turn Israel into Palestine. And I should give them chesed? The rabbis tell us the following. If you go to war against your enemy, and the rabbis ask, this is the Torah says, why doesn't it say when you go to war against your enemy? It's unnecessary to add against your enemy. Obviously, one only goes to war against an enemy, not against a friend. So the rabbis say, know that he's your enemy and not your friend. And just as he would not have mercy upon you, do not have mercy upon him. That's what the rabbis say. Now, sir, if you would live in Israel and you would hear what the Arabs say, you would realize that I'm doing them a chesed by moving them out of the country and not killing them. Because they would not move us out of the country. They would kill us. Sorry, what? Not allowed.
Just made a statement about Chesed.
All right.
Would you,
What's the point? What's the problem?
He was going to use up 20 seconds.
Rabbi, it's a pleasure to hear the truth, but it's also very painful to hear. Two rabbis came from Eretz Israel.
Ma'am, are you asking a question?
I will ask the question.
You only have 20 seconds to ask.
Two rabbis came from Eretz Israel. Both claim to be Orthodox religious rabbis, and both of them claim that we have to give land back because we have to protect ourselves and save our lives as Jews. I'd like you to comment on that, please.
I would love to meet the rabbis in a debate on halacha on that issue. On that issue. I haven't got time to go into the whole concept of halacha, whether it is allowed to give up land, not allowed to give up land. I firmly believe that it's not allowed to give up land. What in the world makes these people think that if you give up land, you're going to have peace? You're going to give up the same land which the Arabs had when they went to war in 67. What is wrong with them? Not as rabbis, but as normal people. How many times must Jews win and give up land? Losers lose, winners win. Losers give up land, winners do not give up land.
You're arrogant about time. I'm having a good time also. Oh, yeah, well, okay. Right.
Sure.
Rabbi, I say your movement is very, act very emotionally. Don't you think emotion doesn't go together with politics?
First of all, I'm not emotional.
Did everyone hear a question?
The question was, I'm emotional, and it doesn't go together with politics. I'm not emotional. I'm a clear-headed, logical person who is based upon halakha. Secondly, I'm not a politician. You're right. You're right. I'm in politics, but I'm not a politician. There is a great difference. A great difference. Why in the world must we have this concept that someone who is in politics has to lie, has to deceive, has to compromise? Where does it say that? Where does it say that? It doesn't say that anywhere. The fact of the matter is that we have accepted that. I don't accept that. I believe that a Jew should not lie, even if he's in the Knesset. And I believe that a Jew should not compromise, even if he's in the Knesset. And I believe that if I were speaking things from my own head, it's one thing. But if I believe that this is halakha, how can I change Shabbat? How can I change laws kashrut? And how can I change? There are the laws of Shabbat and the laws of Aravim, of Arabs.
Safa and Saifa. Give the word of today. Combine both. You cannot do one thing.
Safa and the Saifa. You're right. The sword and the book. I combine the sword and the book. But the sword has to be based upon the book, upon halakha. And what I say is halakha. And I'll be overjoyed and I'm willing to debate any rabbi, any 20 rabbis on halakha in this area. Anyone. Gladly. I can't get anyone to debate. It's frightening.
Mr. Schiffman.
I just want to make a statement.
20 seconds.
I came
It'll be a
back
very
from
short
Israel.
statement.
I came back from Israel a few months ago, and I saw everyone vibrant, strong, healthy, happy. It was Purim, and they were dancing in the street. And I don't draw such a picture as you do.
I'm always deeply moved by someone who has been in Israel for 2 weeks and coming back as an expert. Incredible, unbelievable. I was in China for 2 weeks. What a happy country!
Yes, sir.
I understand why Shamir and Likud would want to ban you, but why is it in the interest of Perez?
I think that there are 2 reasons, or maybe perhaps 3. One, the question was, he can understand why Likud wanted to ban me, but why Peres? Why Shimon Peres? The answer is, one, according to the Labor Party's poll, their inner party's poll, we take 3 seats from Labor. I think that people make a great mistake in thinking that people who vote Labor are all leftists. That's not true at all. At all. There are at least 200,000 Sephardic Jews that have always voted Labor. Not because they are leftists. They came in 1948, were put on a truck, taken to a moshav of Labor, and they sat there. And if they didn't vote Labor, woe unto them. Then they didn't get credit, and they didn't get feed, and they didn't get this, and so on. But they're basically Sephardic Jews, normal. So this time around, they voted Kahane. That's one reason. The second reason is a very, very practical reason. If the Likud was going to vote to ban me, could Peres not? I mean, how could Peres not? Even if he didn't want it. And the third reason is, if I were to take even 7 seats from Likud, with Shamir, you can always handle. With Kahane, you're not going to handle. There was no way that I was going to that I would compromise with him on basic issues. Maybe fourthly, there's another reason. they're looking at the election after this one, and all the 15, 16-year-old kids will vote. That's all Kahane. If you go to the army today, 80% of the soldiers are Kahane. That's what they're afraid of. That's what they're worried about. Paris is, whatever else Paris is he's not a fool. He's worse, but he isn't a fool. He's a fool. And he understands it well. We pose a danger that is an unprecedented danger to them. A party that doesn't compromise. It's not political. And they're not used to it.
All right, replay, Mr. Dresser, you got it?
Now it's all clear? All right.
Before you make a statement about
Chesed, right.
yeah, but you also made a proposal in the past that you would allow the Arabs to list the country as long as they don't have any political rights, certain political rights.
Yes, I still say that.
Okay. So I just want to clear up that if you agree on that.
I am bound by halacha. Halacha states clearly that a ger toshav, a resident stranger, and that any non-Jew who wishes to accept the status of a resident stranger can stay in the country with his personal rights and no national rights. He doesn't vote, he stays in the Knesset, he has nothing to say in the country. He has his personal rights, his economic rights, his social rights, and so on. That is chesed. But nothing else.
Does he have local rights, though, to vote in his own town?
In his own town, in the Arab village, yes, certainly, of course, certainly. Just so long as it doesn't affect Jews. I've said that over and over again. And I've also said that while we have to offer them that, because that is I doubt if there are 100 Arabs below the age of 40 who would accept that. Any more than blacks in South Africa accept their status. So let's not, again, it's a question not having contempt for the Arabs. How many of the Canaanites made peace with Yeshua, despite the fact that he was also duty bound to offer them that? And he did offer them that. And how many took it? Few, very, very few. So that is certainly the offer. And that offer holds true and it stands because it's not me, it's the halacha. Nevertheless, don't hold your breath waiting for, you don't 1 million Arabs to accept it. It just won't be.
Jeremy?
If your ideology is primarily religious as opposed to political, why is it that we don't hear your views echoed by the Gadol in Israel?
That's a question that I often ask myself. But it's not a question to ask me, it's a question to ask them. I can only tell you why I do something or why I don't do something. I can't tell you why they don't do something. I can say this to you. The chief rabbi of Israel, we asked a number of leading rabbis to give us a letter for the court, which would not say that Kahane is right, but which would say what he says is within the Mizgeret shel halacha, within the framework of halacha. In other words, it's within the framework. You agree, you don't agree, but it's within the framework. I couldn't get a single one to give me the letter. Each one said, get 2 others in our side. The chief rabbi also said that to me. After I was banned, he immediately was on Galei Tzahal, on the radio, to say Rabbi Kahane is a great scholar, and what he says, it was a hesped, it wasn't a... I don't know. I don't know why. You have to explain fast. Because I don't know why. I come and I say, and I've written svarim, not just books, svarim, halacha. And I've written that, and I've sent it to great rabbis, and I've asked, please comment on it. Nobody comments on it. Silence.
Yes, sir. Mr. Weitzman.
Rabbi Kahane,
the Jordan River is a natural boundary for Israel. I'm concerned that Judea and Samaria might be turned back to the Arabs, their control, and become part of their country. Would you comment about that?
Well, you know, I don't think that that's an immediate danger. I think that, to be fair to Shimon Peres, I mean, again, this is, well, fair to Shimon Peres night. Halloween, so. Shimon Peres, nobody in Israel has come up with any plan which any Arab leader will ever say. Shimon Peres doesn't say give up all territories. He wants to keep the Jordan River as the defense line of Israel. He's not ready to give up Gush Etzion. He isn't ready to go. Certainly isn't. He's ready to give up most of it, but not all of it. Certainly not Jerusalem. There is not one so-called moderate Arab leader who would ever accept that. None. So it's really an academic issue. I don't know what will happen tomorrow. I have great fears that U.S. pressure will be really, really strong this time. I think that specifically this détente now with the Soviets is terribly dangerous to the Jewish people. Now is the time for the Russians and Americans, for the first time since World War II, to get together and trying to impose a solution on Israel. For the first time. The Americans were never ready for this. They're always wary of allowing the Russians in. Now suddenly it's okay there's the Russians in. As people think. So I don't know. You in the end may be right. I can say this to you, that the majority of Jews of Israel will not allow that to happen. Will not allow that. There will be, if necessary, a civil disobedience in which it will not be allowed to happen. Because if that happens, that's the beginning of the end. Let's take two more questions.
All right, two more questions. That's what I was going to say also.
Excuse me. And as everybody listens, you can write checks too. Come, yes.
מה דעתך אם מקצצים את כל המפלגות של מדינה כזאת קטנה, כל כך הרבה מפלגות, ורק 3 או 4 מפלגות, שיהיה להם כוח רציני בכנסת, שיוכלו להביע איזו עמדה מסוימת?
The question was, what do I think that rather than having all these parties, 27 parties, if there are only 3-4 major parties in the Knesset, so that there will be a firm, view. Okay, I'll answer in English. I think it's a great idea, as long as I'm one of the 3 or 4. It's very, very easy to say, like, there are too many cars on the road. So someone says, good. So you keep your car home. Nah. So just say that. I don't know how to make sure that there will only be 3 or 4 parties, except by perhaps raising the minimum needed, the threshold, to perhaps to 5%. That will knock out all the parties, except me and the...
Yes, again.
Will not.
Yes, Rabbi Kahane, I'm sure most of you here saw you on Nightline and beyond. I just wanted to know, I know from my own parochial viewpoint, how I feel about your views and everything, but what's your feedback, or do you have any feedback on when you were on a program like that, with the Annapolis disclosure, or you get, any kind of sense of, yes, I had some positive feedback, or I got a lot of negative feedback, and the other question you made, will you be on again?
Do you have anything to do with that Nightline program?
I mean, look, clearly, any time that I'm on a program like Nightline with Mike Wallace, no, I mean really, big national programs, 60 Minutes programs, Nightline. There's always a great amount of male, tremendous amount of male, and of course 80% from the non-Jews, and of the non-Jewish male, the overwhelming majority is pro. From the Jews, it's a very, 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 very difficult thing. Being on a program, you see Nightline. You see, for example, the 60 Minutes program was about an 8-minute show. But it was really a 2-hour film. He filmed for 2 hours. And then he decided to put on what he decided. And you can't you can't do anything about that. There is nothing that you can do about that. I know that, for example, there were parts which he cut out, which I thought would have been excellent. There was a whole thing on Jews and non-Jews and intermarriage. And it was extremely hostile. And when I said to him, well, any Jew who's married to a non-Jew wouldn't grasp what I'm saying, that whole issue is cut out. Because Mike Wallace is Jewish, he's married to a non-Jew. So that ended that. And on the whole, I think that he really could have done much, much worse to me. He was fairly fair to me, even though he's a prototype of a Jewish anti-Semite.
I didn't mean, I was specifically asking about Nightline because it's supposed to be a rather open forum, and you can express your views as opposed to having a consensus.
That's
I didn't
true.
see that, what you described. I didn't see that.
On Nightline, he started off intensely hostile. Intensely hostile. And when I started to answer, he suddenly burst in and interrupted me. And I wouldn't let him interrupt. And we went for about 20 seconds. I said, I'm going to answer this question. I'm going to answer it. And then he gave it. But ever since then, I'm not been on Nightline.
Gentlemen, in a couple of hours, we're going to be dubbing chocolate.
Thank you, Rabbi.
My mother's the slimmest woman in the whole congregation. She's 7 to 1.
You're right.
Get out of the way.